Welcome to the Deep Dive. Okay, so get this. We're seeing this really interesting thing happening right now where CEOs, like the top dogs of companies, are deciding to ditch their corporate gigs and go solo.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, right? You'd think they'd be happy at the top.
Exactly. You've got the big salary, the fancy office, all the perks.
Mhm.
But it turns out a lot of these CEOs are feeling burnt out and looking for something more.
It's a real trend. We've got some data from Zero Hedge showing that almost 2,000 CEOs left their companies just this year.
Wow, 2,000, that's huge.
Yeah, it's a 16% jump from last year, which was already a record year for CEO departures. So it's not just a few one-offs, it's like a mass exodus.
So it seems like something bigger is going on here. What's pushing all these CEOs to make such a drastic change?
Well, there are a few things. The Zero Hedge article points to the incredible pressure CEOs face these days. You've got market volatility, demanding shareholders, constant pressure to innovate. It's a lot to handle.
Yeah, it's like they're constantly under a microscope, every decision scrutinized, every move analyzed. No wonder they're feeling the heat.
Exactly. And then you've got the internal pressures, the bureaucracy, the politics, all the stuff that can make it really hard to get things done.
So it's not just about keeping up with the competition. It's about navigating the corporate maze itself.
Right. And on top of that, a lot of these CEOs are hitting a point in their careers where they're looking for more purpose, more meaning in their work.
So they're trading the corner office for the chance to make a real difference, even if it means starting from scratch.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting because, as we'll see, even CEOs struggle with self-doubt and imposter syndrome when they make this leap.
Imposter syndrome. You mean these high-powered executives who are making million-dollar decisions suddenly feel like they're not good enough?
It might sound strange, but it's true. We'll be diving into a newsletter from marketing consultant Art Munoz, who talks about this phenomenon in detail.
So it's not just about having the expertise. It's about having the entrepreneurial mindset, the ability to hustle, to build something from the ground up.
Exactly. And that's something that applies to anyone thinking about going independent, not just CEOs. It's a level playing field in that sense.
I'm really curious to learn more about these challenges and what they mean for anyone considering a similar move. It's inspiring, but also a little daunting.
It is, but it's also a sign that the traditional career path is evolving. There's a growing desire for autonomy, flexibility, purpose, and this trend is only going to accelerate.
So we've got CEOs jumping ship, driven by burnout and the search for something more. And it seems like this is just the tip of the iceberg. Where do we go from here?
Well, first, let's dig into some real-world examples of CEOs who've made this transition and understand why they made that choice. We'll unpack the pressures they faced and the factors that ultimately pushed them to go solo. So we've talked about these big picture trends, right? This idea of CEOs feeling burnt out, wanting more control, more purpose.
Yeah, but it's one thing to talk about trends, another to see it play out in real life.
Exactly. So let's look at some specific examples, companies you might even recognize.
Okay, hit me with it.
We'll take Intel, for instance. Their CEO, Pat Gelsinger, resigned this year.
Intel, wow, they're huge. What happened there?
Well, they had a rough couple of years, declining revenues, even some losses.
Oof, that's got to be tough.
Yeah, and especially in the tech world where things move so fast, the pressure to turn things around must have been intense.
So not just pressure to perform, but to keep up with the pace of innovation, too.
Exactly. And sometimes it's not even about the numbers.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, think about Boeing. Their CEO, Dave Calhoun, stepped down earlier this year.
Boeing, wasn't there some controversy there?
Yeah, a series of safety scandals. It's one thing to deal with financial pressure, but when you're responsible for people's lives, that's a whole other level of stress.
It's a heavy burden for sure.
Yeah.
And it makes you realize CEOs aren't just dealing with spreadsheets and board meetings. Their decisions have real-world consequences.
You got it. And that kind of pressure can wear anyone down. So you have the burnout factor, the desire for more purpose, and then you've got this other interesting pattern. Well, Munoz points out that a lot of CEOs, when they go solo, they end up specializing.
But I thought CEOs were supposed to be good at everything, overseeing the whole operation.
Right, but what we're seeing is that many CEOs are choosing to focus on one particular area of expertise.
So instead of being a jack of all trades, they become, say, a supply chain guru or a marketing whiz, and they offer those skills to multiple companies.
Exactly. It's like they're taking all that experience they've gained and channeling it into one specific area.
It makes sense. They've spent years at the top. They must have picked up some valuable skills along the way.
And by specializing, they can become highly sought-after consultants, commanding top dollar for their expertise.
So we've got CEOs leaving for all sorts of reasons. Burnout, pressure, the search for purpose, and this desire to become more focused. But let's talk about what happens after they leave. What are some of the challenges they face on this solo journey?
Right, it's not all sunshine and roses. Going from running a massive company to running your own show can be a big adjustment.
I bet. What are some of the things that trip them up?
Well, you have to remember, these CEOs, they're used to having a team, a support system, people taking care of the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, the assistants, the analysts, all those folks who make things run smoothly.
Exactly. But when you go solo, you're suddenly wearing all the hats. You're the CEO, the marketer, the accountant, everything.
So it's not just about having the expertise. It's about having the hustle, the entrepreneurial spirit.
Absolutely. And that's something a lot of CEOs may not have had to cultivate in their previous roles.
So what can we learn from that? I mean, for those of us who aren't CEOs but maybe thinking about going independent, what are the key takeaways?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to be clear about your value proposition. What makes you unique? What problems can you solve for clients?
Right. You can't just coast on your past accomplishments.
Yeah.
You have to articulate what you bring to the table, what makes you stand out.
Exactly. And that holds true whether you're a former CEO or just starting out as a freelancer. You have to define your niche, your area of expertise.
And it's interesting because in a way, this whole CEO exodus kind of levels the playing field. No matter how successful you were before, going solo means starting fresh, building something new.
Absolutely. It's a humbling experience, but it's also incredibly empowering.
So we've talked about the why behind this CEO exodus, the reasons they leave and the challenges they face. But now I'm curious, what does this trend tell us about the future of work in general? Is this a blip on the radar or a sign of things to come?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, I think it's a bit of both.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break that down for me.
Well, on the one hand, we're seeing this undeniable shift towards more flexible, autonomous ways of working. And that's not just limited to CEOs. It's happening across all industries.
Right, people wanting more control over their time, their work-life balance, the kind of impact they're making.
Exactly. And technology is a big part of that. Remote work, the gig economy, online platforms, they're all making it easier to create a career on your own terms.
So in a sense, the CEO exodus is just a reflection of this larger trend.
I think that's right. But here's the thing. I don't think it means the end of traditional employment altogether.
So you don't think we're all going to become solopreneurs overnight?
Not necessarily. I think we're moving towards a hybrid model where people have more options, more flexibility.
So it's not about choosing between corporate and independent. It's about having the freedom to blend the two in a way that works for you.
Exactly. We're seeing companies adapt to this new reality, offering more remote work options, flexible schedules, even opportunities for internal entrepreneurship.
So finding that sweet spot between the stability of a traditional job and the freedom of being your own boss.
Exactly. And I think that's a good thing. It means more choices, more opportunities for people to find work that's meaningful and fulfilling.
Okay, so lots to think about there. But let's bring it back to our listeners. Why should they care about all this? What's the takeaway for them, even if they're not planning to quit their jobs tomorrow?
That's a great question. And I think there are a few key things to remember.
Hit me with...
First, the old model of climbing the corporate ladder, it's not the only way to succeed anymore. There are other paths, other ways to build a meaningful career.
So it's about expanding our definition of success, recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. And second, even the most successful people face challenges and setbacks. The fact that CEOs struggle with imposter syndrome shows that we're all human. We all have our doubts.
That's really reassuring to hear, actually. It's easy to get caught up in the highlight reel and forget that everyone struggles at some point.
Exactly. And third, this whole trend underscores the importance of adaptability and lifelong learning. The world is changing fast, and those who can adapt will thrive.
So it's not about what you know now, it's about your willingness to learn and evolve.
Precisely. And that's true whether you're a CEO, a freelancer, or somewhere in between.
Okay, so we've covered why CEOs are leaving, the challenges they face, and what it all means for the future of work. But there's one more piece of the puzzle I want to touch on. The economic factors driving this trend.
Right, let's talk about how the market itself is making independence a more viable option for so many people.
So it seems we're witnessing this perfect storm. CEOs are craving more autonomy and purpose, and the market is responding with a growing demand for specialized skills and flexible work arrangements. It's like the stars are aligning for the rise of the solopreneur.
That's a great way to put it. And this is playing out in a few key areas. First, there's the rise of fractional work, which we touched on earlier. Companies are increasingly open to hiring experts for short-term projects or specialized roles instead of bringing on full-time employees.
It's like the gig economy, but for the C-suite.
Exactly. And it's a win-win situation. Companies get access to top talent without the overhead, and solopreneurs enjoy the flexibility and variety they crave.
Plus, it allows those solopreneurs to work with multiple companies, broadening their networks and gaining diverse experience.
Absolutely. Then there's the cost-cutting factor. In uncertain economic times, companies are always exploring ways to reduce expenses. Hiring independent contractors is often a more cost-effective solution compared to adding to the payroll.
That makes sense. You're not covering benefits, office space, and all the additional expenses that come with a full-time employee.
Right. And for companies that require specialized skills but may not need them constantly, it's a much more efficient approach.
So it's not just about CEOs going solo. It's about the entire market becoming more receptive to independent talent.
Precisely. And this is where the technological transformation we've been discussing comes into play. AI, automation, remote work. These forces are reshaping how work is done, creating opportunities for those who are willing to adapt.
It's almost as if this CEO exodus is a preview of what's to come. It suggests that the future of work will be more fluid, independent, and driven by technology.
That's a very insightful observation, and it's something for all of us to consider, regardless of whether we're CEOs or just starting our careers.
So let's wrap things up with some practical advice for our listeners. If someone out there is thinking, maybe this whole solopreneur thing is for me, what steps can they take to explore this path?
That's a great question. I believe the first step is to clearly define your value proposition. What are you truly good at? What problems can you solve? What unique skills and experiences do you bring to the table?
So it's about identifying what you can offer that others can't or won't.
Precisely. Once you have a solid understanding of your value, you can start thinking about your target market. Who are the individuals or companies that would benefit most from your skills and expertise?
Right. Because simply being good at something isn't enough. You have to find the people who need what you're good at.
Absolutely. After that, it's all about building your brand and expanding your network. Create a strong online presence, showcase your work, and connect with potential clients.
So it's about putting yourself out there, letting people know who you are and what you're capable of.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to start small. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow and launch a full-scale business. Take on some freelance projects, do some consulting work, and gradually build your portfolio and confidence.
It's about taking those initial steps and seeing where they lead.
Precisely. And remember, even CEOs grapple with imposter syndrome, so don't let fear hold you back. Take that leap and discover what you can accomplish.
I love that. So to all our listeners, the Great CEO Exodus is more than just a headline. It signifies a changing work landscape where independence, flexibility, and purpose are becoming increasingly vital.
Whether you aspire to be a CEO or forge your own unique path, the insights we've gained today can empower you to navigate this evolving world of work and create a career that aligns with your values and aspirations.
If even those at the top are leaving the traditional corporate ladder, perhaps it's time to start building your own path to success, one step at a time.
And you might be surprised to learn that you already possess the tools and resources to do just that, even if you weren't aware of it, because many CEOs transitioning to solopreneurship are discovering they don't. The playing field has never been more level, making it an opportune time for you to take the leap.